You must stay at home. Stay at home.
Hello, and welcome to Lockdown, hosted by Steve Bomford with Mike Davis-Marks. Our armed forces operate in challenging environments. Week by week, we'll explore what we can learn from their experiences.
Afternoon, Steve. I see you've got hold of another Royal Marine turned TV presenter. How interesting.
I have indeed, a fellow called Monty Halls, and he is very interesting, I have to say.
Yeah, I've seen a few of his programmes, and I would concur with that. So I'm really looking forward to hearing the interview.
Monty, first of all, I'd like to say thank you very much for agreeing to come on the podcast, despite all the admin issues and technological challenges.
No worries. No. We live, it's my pleasure, Stephen. We live in a little valley in Dartmouth, and getting anything like a decent internet signal is just epic. So, but I'm quietly confident.
Excellent. So some downsides in living in a very beautiful part of the world, I believe.
Or some would say an upside. You know, it's the fact we're in a proper little haven here. We don't really get a mobile signal here as well. And it's sort of enforced isolation from the white noise of online chatter. And it's not a bad thing, actually. It's not a bad thing.
No, sounds good, actually. Now you talk about it like that. So let's crack on. I've got a few questions I'd like to ask you, and then we'll chat around those issues. So let's start at the beginning, I guess. Could you tell me a little bit about your time in the Royal Marines, please, and kind of where that led to?
Yeah. I joined the Corps in '88, and I left in '96. And I have to say, related to what the lads and lasses have been getting up to in recent years, my career was so quiet, relatively, in terms of ops and in terms of war. Basically, there was no major conflicts really going on around the world that the Corps was being deployed to. So, yeah, I had a wonderful time in the Corps, quite frankly. And originally, I was in the Navy for a year, and then I transferred to the Marines. And I look back on it with the fondest memories. Fantastic quality of people. All my best mates. My best muccas are still bootnecks, that I served with or joined up with or whatever. And I think the lingering memory is just the sort of real high quality of the individuals that make up that organisation, and a real eclectic mix as well. I think you've got eccentrics, heathen kings, warriors, intellectuals, loose cannons, a real mix of people from all backgrounds and all united under the green lids. So, but I didn't, I never fired a shot in anger, quite frankly. But it was a real pleasure, and it's obviously stayed with me as it does with so many people, I think.
So, why did you decide to transfer from the Navy to the Marines then? What made you do that?
Yeah, well, I joined the Navy to be a diver. I wanted to be a mine clearance diver, and I was told in the careers office, oh yeah, you can do that almost straight away, no problem. They just wanted to get me in, and then I started my training, and they said, well, you won't be doing it for 3 or 4 years. And when you're 20 years old, that's a lifetime, 3 or 4 years. And I had nothing wrong with the Navy. I enjoyed myself during training and had some great experiences, and, again, made some great muccas. But you get to spend a day at the Commando Training Centre as a midshipman, as a young naval officer. And I went down to the Commando Training Centre and just thought, God, this is fantastic. Wow, this organisation is really great. And I had a PTI at the Naval College who was a Marine called Rog Tinson. And Rog took me to one side one day and, shall we say, forcibly explained to me that I should be in the Corps. But strongly suggested to me that I should be in the Corps. He was like, get yourself in the Corps, fella, and it was great. It was wise counsel. I think he could see that I was a little bit frustrated. I was always very physical, like the physical side of life, and also really like the dynamic in terms of it was very egalitarian, the Corps. It is very egalitarian. And I was really attracted to that as well. And dear old Rog was like, right, get yourself over there, fella. And so I transferred. Yeah, but and had to start again, start all the training again and everything. But yeah, it's certainly not a decision I regret.
So you mentioned about diving. So your interest in diving obviously goes back a long way then, in terms of that, how that would lead, where that would lead you to in the future.
Oh yeah, I mean, it predated my time in the Corps. I left school and went straight to Australia. I left school at 17, travelled to Australia, worked in Australia for a year, ended up working as a dive master out there, and then came back, worked as a diving instructor in Europe for a few years. And yeah, so it was always, diving was always massive for me. And but it's interesting, again, in the Corps, if you want to dive, really you're looking at SBS. You can go ship's diver as well. I don't know if bootnecks can go ship's diver. Certainly Navy can go ship's diver. And I was booked on a ship's diver's course, and then the course got cancelled at the last minute when I was in the Navy. And so, yeah, never made that jump really to military diving. I sort of eyed SB and just thought, have I got it in me? Could I do it? And all that. And I had a chat to a mate who was SBS at the time, and he said, it's a real commitment. You got to commit to this. It's not something you can do in a sort of, I'm going to ad lib it, I'm just going to turn up and cuff it. You can't really cuff it. And also, he said the commitment afterwards. He said, you are operational a lot of the time, you're flat out. And he was like, fella, just really have a think about it. And I thought, I really like my time off. I enjoy my time off too much, And I question whether I would have had the military professionalism to do it. I loved being in the Corps and I loved being a bootneck, but I don't know if I was like professional enough in military terms to go SF. So I made the decision not to go. And so diving for me has been very much kind of white sand and bikinis ever since, really.
Well, I would say that was a very wise decision. Well done.
Well, it's, again, I got a lot of muccas who went SF and are in SF, and universally they're incredibly high quality people. And and talk very passionately about the experience of being SF. So hats off to them. Hats off to anyone who goes down that route, really. But I've sort of decided, a surprisingly sort of mature decision for a guy in his mid-20s. I was like, you know what? I'm just not sure I would cut the mustard. And in retrospect, I think that was a pretty good decision. I think that sort of, as I said, that dedication, that it's not ruthlessness, that's the wrong word, that focus, that real focus militarily, I'm not sure I had it in terms of SF. So there we go. We'll never know, which is not a bad thing.
Well, you say you may have made the right decision. I think in terms of your output, and we'll come on to this, in terms of film output, I think you did make the right decision, because you've produced some fantastic TV that I've seen. I'm sure you've done a lot more that I haven't seen.
Yeah, maybe I've been compensating ever since for not doing the SF thing. And, so I've been really lucky, what the Corps equipped me with, and what I'd suggest the armed forces equip anyone with, is you become a very good project manager, and you become very good at cuffing things, and you become very good at doing great things with very limited resources and being very aim focused. And when I left the Corps, I did a marine biology degree and thought, right, well, how am I going to combine these two things? And I just thought, well, I'll just start running expeditions and projects around the world. And, that sounds an easy transition. It isn't. I don't think anyone steps away from the services and just has a really easy instant transition. We all struggle with different areas. That's sort of part of the deal. And anyone who is struggling, don't for heaven's sake, don't think you're unusual or anything like that. Everyone struggles in some shape or form. And the way I struggled is I'd locked onto what I wanted to do, but it was turning it into a viable way of making a living was a long journey. It took me 6, 7, 8 years. I was a 32-year-old man sleeping on my best mate's floor on a mattress, for a year, 18 months, because I had no money. I had nothing. And that was all part of my journey, really. But I think one of the things the services really give you, they give you two things. They make you very good, very aim focused, saying, right, this is what I'm going to do. And I think the other thing they give you is dogged persistence.
Yeah.
Just to think, I'm going to crack on here, and I'm going to regroup periodically and think, okay, what have I got? And feel sorry for myself for a little bit. And then I'm going to go again. And when I look back, I think that was very much a characteristic of that period. I had a lot of mates saying to me, mate, give it up. It's never going to work out. Give it up. And the story I always tell is you may remember Bruce Parry. Bruce was the guy who presented Tribes on TV. He did Arctic, Amazon, amazing adventure and all that. And me and Brucey, and so Bruce was a bootneck as well, and we sort of set out on this journey together. And I remember we met up for a coffee in London, and we were chatting, and I was like, oh, how's it all going, mate? And he was like, oh, yeah, it's amazing. I've got loads of brilliant projects going. And he said to me, how's it going with you? And I was like, oh, it's incredible. I've got loads of projects going. Yeah, it's all going to be great. We were both lying through our, obviously. And then we finished the coffee, and neither of us could pay for the coffee. We didn't have enough money to pay for the coffee.
Wow.
We had been relying on the other one to pay for the coffee. So, we all hit these points. We do, and like I said, you just got to dog it out and just keep your eye on the prize and celebrate little victories. And I think that was that 6-7 year transition for me into thinking, oh yeah, I think I can make a go of this. I was 40 before I thought to myself, oh yeah, I think there's something here and I can make a go of it.
So was your plan? So you decided to become a marine biologist with this in mind. Was that your plan when you left the Corps?
No, you used the word plan there, Steve, which is a gross exaggeration for anything I had. I just knew what I was interested in, and that was the marine environment, the sea, the ocean. I knew I was quite passionate about conservation as well, and travel. And my great heroes were all people who'd done epic expeditions and exploration and things like that. And so I thought there's something there. And so when I definitely wanted to do marine biology. Cousteau was a huge hero of mine, and Gerald Durrell was as well. And I sort of, when I left the Corps, I left to do a marine biology degree. I was always passionate about that side of things. So, and it really, over the course of that degree, I thought, how am I going to pay for this? I thought, well, I stayed in the RMR, and again, I would urge anyone who might be struggling a bit, who might be thinking, I'm just trying to find my own direction here. Look at reserve forces. Just have a look at that, because you're such a valuable asset as a former regular bootneck or a regular soldier or Air Force, Navy, whatever. And you're kind of back in the fold, but you're not fully committed, if you see what I mean. You can develop other stuff and you make a bit of money. And so the RMR, make no bones about it. I say to people, oh, yeah, I paid for my degree by doing great expeditions around the world. Well, that's not strictly true. The RMR massively helped me because, I did a weekend a month. I did, every Tuesday night I was there. I did a couple of camps of a couple of weeks. That just meant I had a trickle income to keep me going. And I ran some expeditions and projects during the course of my university time, some of which made me money and some of which lost me money. So the RMR thing was it steadied the ship throughout, really. And it also, as I said, just gave me a touchstone back to that military world and made me think, oh yeah, I'm still a bootneck. I'm still, it was a great comfort in a way to sort of go back to base camp of being a bootneck once a week, essentially, but knowing that I was carving my own path in Sibby Street as well.
So expeditions, how did that sort of start to succeed? When did you know that actually this is kind of working? Because you obviously moved into filmmaking as well.
Yeah. The exped side, I ran a series of expeditions when I was at university, and the way I did that is approaching large expedition organisations that were taking young people to various places, like the Gap Year sort of thing, so that was the way it started off. There was a great organisation called Trek Force, and I worked with them for a little while, and I led expeds for them, and got a bit of money for doing that, not a huge amount, but I was learning my trade. That was my apprenticeship, really. And then I started running my own projects. Then I started putting my projects together. And it was funny. The other thing I think the Corps gives you and the services give you is ambition, actually, and confidence. You don't know how ignorant you are You don't know what you don't know, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
And I just thought, well, if I'm going to do an exped, I'm going to do the whole freaking world. I'm going to do a global circumnavigation, finding the greatest dive sites on Earth. And it's funny that when I look back on it now, I think, what was I thinking? Oh my God, I had no experience putting these projects together. I was unknown. And I marched into the offices of Diver magazine and said, right, I've got a project. And I'm going to go right the way around the world, and I'm going to dive the 10 best dive locations on Earth. And I'm going to film it, take photographs, and write articles for you. And what you've got to do, Diver Magazine, is advertise it for me. And Diver Magazine thought, God, this guy's amazing. It's weird we've never heard of him, but wow, he must be a really great explorer. And I'd done bugger all at that point. And it was just neck, really, and enthusiasm as well. I was super enthusiastic about it. I really, really wanted to do it. And and they said to me, what's this called, this expedition? And I hadn't come up with a name. And I just watched Michael Palin's Full Circle.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, it's called the Full Circle. It's called the Full Circle Expedition. And they were like, wow, what a great name, And I was like, yeah, thank God for Michael Palin. And put that together. That was the first big one, and got a bunch of punters involved who all paid, a decent sum. They all paid about 12,000 quid to come along, and then the upshot of it, I contacted dive centres around the world and said, look, I can guarantee you publicity, but I haven't got a lot of money, because I didn't. If you think of the whole round the world trip, and then took 14 divers, around the world on a 3-month epic. That was the first Full Circle, and it worked so well that I ended up doing 5 of them, doing different projects, and the last 2 were TV series for Channel 5. So yeah, it all sort of came from that big idea. And I think having the chutzpah to walk into that office and say, right, have I got something for you guys? Blimey, you're lucky. I've got something amazing for you. It could have gone horribly wrong. That project, looking back on it, could have gone horribly wrong, but no, we managed to pull it off. So, and a lot of that was the qualities the services give you. The ability to organize, the ability to put together a plan, the ability to evolve when the plan doesn't work out, the ability to manage, all of that stuff. That all came straight from the core. So yeah, and I think it was doing a few of those. That's when I started to think, oh yeah, there's something here. I think I can make a living doing this.
So there's a level of self-belief and confidence there as well, isn't there? To just walk in there and blag it, cuff it, I think is the word you used, isn't it? Oh, that's quite impressive, I think.
Yeah, I think you don't. I use the expression, you don't know what you don't know, as in you don't know how deep your ignorance is. Ignorance is bliss sometimes. And just to think, I reckon I could do that. I reckon I can pull that off. And what I'm going to do is get in there, get commitment, and then I'm going to go and figure it out. And so it does. I think that took a particular level of, again, chutzpah and all that. But the thing I would say to anyone who's leaving the services or has left the services is, do not underestimate your ability to pull things off, your ability to project manage, your ability to, because married to that sort of confidence and all that, it's also insecurity. It's weird, because when I started getting into telly and I'd sit with these high-powered execs, TV execs and creatives around a table, I think to myself, God, what am I even doing here? I'm just a hairy bummed bootneck who hasn't got a clue about. And actually, in retrospect, you look back and think you were just as capable as everyone else in that room of coming up with ideas, of probably more capable of making things happen. But you're insecure because you think, oh, these guys are all experts in their fields, guys and gals are all expert in their field. And actually, you contribute as much as anyone else. So I think it's overcoming that as well, is that sometimes you think, whatever field you're going into as an ex-service person, I don't add value here. There's nothing I can bring to this conversation because all these people are amazing in their own field. And actually you realize a fair old percentage of people sitting around that table, when I look back on it, were total muppets. Didn't have a clue. And actually, I could have really contributed to those initial TV discussions if I'd just been a bit more confident in my own ability. So I think it's a combination of being confident and being bold and not underestimating the skills that you bring to almost any environment as an ex-service person.
And recognizing that within yourself, isn't it? That's the challenge, I think. And I think that's a really important message for people to our listeners, to recognize your own abilities and build upon that in terms of trying to achieve what it is that you want to achieve.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, there were many dark moments. Don't get me wrong. It's easy when you look back to just look back on the nice times and think, oh yeah, I marched into Diver Magazine's office and said, right, I've got a brilliant expedition for you. And I ran a few of those, and then TV got interested and started to do a few TV projects and things. And it's not like that. It isn't this exponential curve of success. There were some really down times. I've been called in by my bank manager and being told, right, you are maxed out on everything. This, again, I was in my 30s. You are maxed out on everything. Go and get a job. Monty. But then I explained a little bit more about what I was trying to do. And he was like, all right, we'll bear with you. We'll bear with you for a little while. And shortly after that, things started to really happen. So there are plenty of sort of dark times, and again, I would say as well, the thing that got me through those dark times were my muccas from the Corps.
Yeah.
Great old mates, great old relationships I'd sit and have a beer with and have a laugh with at the absurdity of it all. And they were going through various stages of their lives as well, some with great success, others with real challenges, but those shared experiences, we're getting better and better at it, I think, of actually hooking up with a mucka and just saying, mate, I'm struggling a bit at the moment, actually. And you'd be surprised. I think you're always surprised at the stories that emerge when you say that to a friend.
Yeah.
It turns out that their life isn't all bloody, roses and platinum credit cards either. And, there's a great expression that says, never judge the inside of your life by the outside of someone else's.
Yeah.
People always try and give the impression they're doing really well. And we're really bad at that in the services, ex-service people. You always try, oh yeah, mucka, everything's great, and whatever. And just to sit down and have a beer. I know it's a message that's hammered home nowadays, but it's so, so important. And I've got a couple of really great muckers that I've started to do that with a lot more. And they're really receptive to it. And like, yeah, mate, talk us through it. And I think particularly post-pandemic, we've all had times we've struggled. I don't know anyone who hasn't struggled during this period with something. And it's really great to have those chats. It's so, so important, I think.
Yeah. There's a few things you've made me think of there. I read an expression, overnight success is about 10 years.
Oh, yeah. It's like saying to Usain Bolt, mate, let's face it, you only do 10 seconds work every 6 months, don't you? You run 100 meters and it's only 10 seconds work and you take the rest of the time off. That 10 seconds invested in that, 9.8 seconds or whatever it is 20 years of complete graft. And and anyone who gets a lucky break massively earns that lucky break, I think. Woody Allen said that 98% of success in life is turning up. And so you just got to keep turning up. And again, in my area, which is media and things like that, you just got to keep turning up. You've just got to, and you get knocked back again. That is the characteristic of my world, the media side, is you're knocked back again and again and again and again. And you've just got to be dogged and persistent and say, no, let's keep going and all that. And again, I think the context of, meeting up with your mucker and having a good old drip about how unfair it all is and how you're being seen off and how hacked off you are with it all. And they're great conversations, those, and I've had lots of them. Believe me. So
you said that the Channel 5 got involved in Full Circle, the last couple of expeditions. I'm guessing that's where the TV angle started? Do you
Well,
want to tell
no,
me?
actually, the TV stuff proper started with a services contact. It was a mate of mine who worked at the MOD, and a phone was ringing. Again, it's one of those great stories, isn't it? Serendipity. A phone was ringing in the MOD, and it wasn't his phone. And he was walking down a corridor, I think, and heard the phone ringing and thought, I better pick it up, might be important. He picked it up, and it was Channel 4 wanting a bootneck or a para to take part in a show called Superhumans. And he thought of me kipping on my mattress and my best mate's floor. I thought, Martin would be good for that. And he gave me a call. And that show was my break in television. My show was how I got into TV, really. There were a couple of other things that I'd circled around beforehand. We did a thing called Uncharted Territories with ITV, which was an exped in Central America, but there was nothing really. But Superhumans was the big break, and it was all because my mucca picked up that phone. So how about that? And I think, again, that's one of the big lessons looking back is when you get a break, you've got to appreciate it. You've got to understand what it is, and you've got to own it. You've got to say, right, this is my moment, and I'm going to totally own this moment. I'm going to give it everything.
Yeah.
And I think I recognized it for what it was. I was like, right, this is big for me. And I won Superhumans, weirdly. And that was it. From that point on, Channel 4 started giving me a bit of work, and then picked up a few other jobs, and then gradually, started. But it's such a weird business, TV. I wouldn't say I've made it in TV at all. There's it's just a permanent thing. You're permanently reinventing yourself. You're permanently. So nowadays, and for the foreseeable future, I'm behind the camera now. I'm executive producer of productions and things. And got my own little production company and trying to keep that going. So, I mean, it's a constant thing, really. Constant evolution.
Yeah. So, Monty, how did you go from being like the personality that's being filmed in terms of Superhumans onto, TV production? Because it's not for everybody, is it?
No. Well, again, they say that TV is one of the only businesses that when you retire, nobody tells you. It was a little sort of combination of things, really. I had my family, had my little girls, and here I am down in South Devon with Tam, my long-suffering and lovely missus. And so I lost a bit of appetite for it because a lot of the projects I was doing were very long stays overseas, a bit like being in the services. They were deployments almost. And so I did 6 months on the west coast of Scotland, 6 months on the west coast of Ireland, 6 months in the Outer Hebrides, 6 months in a Cornish fishing village. Then I did Great Barrier Reef, which was, several months in Australia. And they were almost back to back, those projects. And I just sort of lost the appetite for it a little bit. I thought there's more important things, and that's me being with my little girls. And so I stepped back from it a little bit. But also, it's just the natural sort of evolution and transition of these things is that other figures emerged, and sort of occupied the very limited space. So Steve Backshall, he's a great mucker, lovely, lovely man, Steve, hugely successful, really driven. And interestingly, he's a kind of tactical bound behind me in terms of his age. He's 10 years younger.
Yeah.
And I just wonder if you hit a certain point in your life, you're like, what, me walking across another field, pointing at a castle saying, and that castle over there is blah, blah, blah. I'm not sure how much of that I can do anymore, actually. And also I became really interested in the process of how do you put these productions together? And, how do you, again, it's a military thing, really. How do you deal with the manpower, and how do you lead a production, as opposed to just being the figure on camera? And so I really started to get into that. And that led to setting up Sea Dog Productions, which is the company I run now. And so it's just evolution points in your career, I think. And and it's a good evolution, that one, because it's almost like you start managing a little bit more and you become a bit more strategic using the experience that you've gained over the years by being in front of the camera, as it were. And I think a lot of careers evolve in that direction. And I often think, I'm 54 now, and when you're 54, you're either becoming more relevant or less relevant in your chosen career. And I think to become more relevant, I had to make a jump to kind of management, as it were, executive producing of things, as opposed to being an increasingly grey presenter, sort of with a decreasing bandwidth of things I could do that were relevant.
Yeah,
actually. So that's the transition. I still am massively jealous of Steve when I see all the amazing stuff he's doing around the world, and Bear and people like that. Fair play to him. Aldo Kane, brilliant to see him coming on. Young Bootneck, who's doing brilliant things in that space at the moment, and a couple of other Bootnecks really doing well in that sort of space as well. So. There's part of me, there's a bit jealous. The old Warhorse. I look at them and I think, oh yeah, I've still got it. I could do that. and then I look at my little girls and I think, oh, sod it, I'll just go and mow the lawn. So there you go. So change of mindset.
So I'm 55, right? And you said you find out your relevance when you're 54. I think this might have passed me by.
Yeah, no, it was a thought I had the other day. Actually, I thought it's funny. You're in your profession, your chosen field. You're either becoming more influential, it's a really interesting age, your 50s, more influential, or considerably less influential, and or you're just carving a path, which I think an awful lot of us are.
Yeah.
And it just struck me that I thought it's not a desire to become more influential, but it's a desire to create your own identity and your own signature within your field. And I just thought the production side is kind of where I think I'm heading with all this. And also writing. I do a lot of writing as well. And, I thought maybe to focus on that a little bit more than the pure presenting side, really. So, it was just a thought.
Is that about meaning and purpose, do you think?
Yes, I think it is. And, I think maybe a bit of legacy as well. When you get to a certain age, you want to leave a little bit of a legacy. And, and part of that is working with the younger generation, passing on your knowledge and passing on, lessons you've learned and all that sort of stuff. And, particularly applies to my little girls as well. As anyone does with a family, I want to mentor my family, I think there is a bit of legacy there as well. Just thinking, I want to build a decent company here, and I want to make stories about the environment and make films about the environment that have like proper messaging.
Yeah.
And also military stuff as well. I want to tell the story. We're filming a series about the Corps at the moment, and I want to tell the story of this extraordinary organisation that I was lucky enough to be a part of. So, it is a sort of legacy thing going on, really.
I look forward to that about the Corps. That should be good. So I've just binge watched your Galapagos series.
Yeah,
which I thought was fantastic. I didn't even know where the Galapagos was. I just knew it was somewhere near South America, and that's a pretty big place, isn't it? So I failed my geography there, undoubtedly. So that's a production of your own, isn't it? Do you want to tell me a little bit about that and how that came about?
Yeah. Well, I was a member of the Galapagos Trust, Conservation Trust, for a very long time, and then very kindly they called me and said, "Look, would you like to be our president?" I said yes, and then thought, wouldn't it be amazing to go and actually visit the islands for a sustained period? I'd been there several times on filming projects and leading tours out there, et cetera, but I thought, wouldn't it be amazing to go out there for a decent amount of time and, figure out really what's going on out there. Really, it's such an iconic archipelago, and they're the lens by which we view conservation around the world in so many ways, the islands. And I didn't really know what was going on. So I suggested that and thought I'd go out there for a few months. And there's a mate of mine called Martin Pelthorpe that I'd done a lot of filming with. And he was like, there's a TV series there, without a doubt. And go out with your family. And I didn't want to do a big tour away again without the kids. So we sort of, kicked that around for a little while. And then I approached Channel 4. I'd just done a series called Freedom Trails for Channel 4, which was all about World War II escape routes through Europe and the survivors and all that sort of stuff. And Channel 4 said yes. So that's how that series came about. And so it came about, I was out there as a conservationist and as president of the Galapagos Conservation Trust to see the work they were doing there. But also it was about how the story of the family living there as a family for a decent period for several months. So yeah, it was brilliant. I look back on it, 2 series now, and I look back on it, I was like, God, what a thing to do with your kids, just so lucky to be able to do it and have the record, the archive. And it was hard sometimes that, people sort of snort at that and say, oh yeah, it must have been really hard, 3 months in the Galapagos. But the Galapagos are 600 miles offshore. They're a set of volcanic rocks in the middle of nowhere. Infrastructure, when you're living there, is pretty austere sometimes, particularly the second phase, you can't drink the water straight from the tap. The electricity cuts out every 2 minutes, no internet, which I know is like a first world problem. But when you've got a couple of little kids, it can be quite challenging at times. And but I remember saying to Tam, I was like, our children will show this series to their grandchildren. That's how lucky we are to be doing this. So we always sort of bore that in mind, really. And we only, I think we had like 2 TIFFs the entire time we were out there, which is pretty much par for the course wherever we are, quite frankly. So, it's a great experience, really.
So are they both going to become marine biologists, your daughters?
One of them definitely will. The older one, Isla.
Yeah.
Moles is more into she loves dancing. So, I'm hoping that Isla's going to become a, very successful marine biologist, and Moles will become a very successful dancer, and I can retire and just surf.
Live off the proceeds.
Surf and dive. That'd be my, ideal retirement, I think.
So one of the things about that series that really shocked me, and I don't know why, because you see a lot of it, is the footage about the sharks and the way sharks are being decimated. What can we...
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge issue in the world at the moment. Huge. The snag with it is that you are removing a keystone predator. You're removing an animal that regulates the environment that it lives in. That's the problem. And no one knows what the long-term impact is going to be of removing sharks from the sea. 100 million a year being taken from the sea. And because they're an apex predator, they reproduce very slowly. They have to reach, quite a level of maturity, several years before they reproduce. So they can't keep up. They can't keep up. So it's a big, big problem. One of many problems that the environment faces at the moment, but the eradication of a shark will radically impact the sea. And we're just not quite sure how at the moment. All we know is a very, very bad thing, and it has to stop happening.
So if people want to get involved in doing something about all this that we've just talked about, what would you recommend, or is there any ways they can get into with the organisations that you're part of?
Yeah. There's Galapagos Conservation Trust genuinely do fantastic work. That's the reason I joined them, originally, is I researched a few organisations doing work. And on the shark side, there's a great organisation called Bite Back. And Bite Back have achieved some really notable successes in terms of lobbying politicians to stop shark finning, to all sorts of things like that. So Bite Back, I'd really recommend them. Shark Trust are good as well. So there's lots of organisations. There's things you can do personally as well. And the number one thing you can do to positively impact the marine environment is buy local. Buy local fish. Go to your fishmonger. Don't go to a supermarket. We buy 84% of our fish at supermarkets.
Yeah. And,
in terms of supply chains, local, sustainable fish, your fishmonger's the place to go, frequently working with small local boats, et cetera, et cetera. So, that's, if someone wants to do something instantly that's great for the environment, shop local. And that covers a whole bunch of areas as well. Logistics, transport, sustainable production techniques, all this sort of stuff, shop local. That's something we can all do. And just, we're guilty of it. Me and Tam, we're really guilty of it. We're short of time, so we pop into Sainsbury's, we do it all the time.
Yeah.
So, There we go. There we go. That's a nice, simple, thing, I think, because we're all desperate to try and do something, aren't we? Not just join a conservation group. We want to do something. So there we are. That's what we can all do, I think.
I think that's the challenge, isn't it, that we all face? The problems just seem so vast, whether it's climate, environment, so on and so forth. What do we do about it? And sometimes that's not easy to find out or be sure you're doing the right thing even.
Yeah, well, the interesting one there, and what I always say to people is you've got a choice. You can either do something or do nothing. That's your choice. And when you look back, when you're old and, you look back on your life, you will think to yourself, I should have done something. Yeah. I should have done something. Even if it's saying, right, I'm not going to drink from a plastic bottle anymore. No more plastic bottles. Yeah, as simple as that, which is a decision we made in our house a couple of years ago. Said no more plastic bottle. Everything is a metal water bottle that you refill and, or whatever, but no more plastic bottles. Even that decision is significant. It's significant, or right, today I'm going to join a conservation group. Even if it means I've got a direct debit once a month that just goes out. I never do anything. It's just a bit of money to that conservation group. Your 30 quid a month will make have a significant effect on that conservation group, So I think it's a straight choice. It's binary, actually. These things are so overwhelming and so complicated and so nuanced about the impacts and all that. But actually, personally, it's a binary choice. You either do something or you do nothing. That's it. That's your choice right now, today. And it's really easy to do something, actually, and say, right, great, I've done something. I can crack on with my life,
So it's several billion little changes can make a big difference, can't they?
Absolutely. Absolutely. They really can. And, your 30 quid a month, blimey, that has an impact. It really is. And I've seen that. I've seen it in the Galapagos. I've seen the impact, the money that people donate in the UK has in that islands. I've seen the projects. I've seen the guys walking around with the Galapagos Conservation Trust T-shirts on, doing amazing work out there that are keeping the island safe. So it really does. It really adds up.
I find what you're talking about completely inspirational there, and if people just listen to that and take a little bit of that advice, I think that'd be good for everybody.
Yes, so, absolutely.
Finally, just coming back to the core, you've been campaigning on Twitter is there a new campaign you've been supporting on Twitter in regards to the core?
Oh, what, the Iron Challenge?
Yes.
Well, there we go. You mentioned at the start, Steve, if there was anything I wanted to promote, and I couldn't really think of anything. Royal Marine's Iron Challenge takes place on September the 19th. Now, it's an iron distance ultra adventure race. But don't be put off by that if you're a Sunday cyclist, if you're whatever, because you can enter individual legs. So it's three... it's a swim, a cycle, and a run. Now, if you're a complete gladiator and a ninja and a triathlete and all that, you can do all three. It's an Ironman route. And it's here in South Devon. It's absolutely beautiful, the route. Stunning. It's one of the most beautiful Ironman routes in the world, I think. So you swim off a place called Blackpool Sands, lovely little enclosed cove. You swim 2.4 miles, then you get out, get on your bike, cycle 112 miles around the lanes of Dartmouth, South Devon, and then you get off your bike, you run the South Coast Path, 26 miles and back, and then you're finished. But what we've done is opened it up to anyone who just wants to do one of those things. And even if you're a Sunday cyclist, over the course of a day, you can do 100 miles. If you get off, have a picnic halfway through, it doesn't matter. You can walk 26 miles on the coast path in a single day. You can do it, you walk it, jog it, whatever. Or you can breaststroke, around a 2.4 mile course, because the swim course itself, you can get out it's 5 laps. You can get out every lap and sit on the beach and think, okay, right, let's get back in and, swim another couple of widths right along the, the very edge of the shoreline sort of thing. So we're encouraging everyone of every stripe to come along and just give it a go. And all the money we raise is going to the Royal Marines charity. So it's all going to support our veterans, support their dependents, to support the core family, to support anyone who's having a bit of a time of it at the moment. So it's the Raw Marines Iron Challenge, and it's on September the 19th this year. And it's going to be a fantastic celebration of everything that the Royal Marines is all about. You know, family, community, helping each other out, getting each other around. We ran a pilot event last year and every single person got around the pilot event, you know. So there we are. That's what we're pushing at the moment.
That sounds brilliant. I really like the idea of being able to do a long swim in installments.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that's what we're saying to everyone, you know, just don't worry about it. You know, if it takes you all day, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You know, if you sort of get out and sit on the beach and have a little cry and then get back in again and, you know, do another little width of it's a very enclosed bay, so it's really safe. And you could swim 5 yards offshore, you know, if you were that way inclined, sort of thing. So, but most people are just swim. It's a buoyed course. So it's 3 buoys, big orange buoys. So you just swim around the orange buoys. And the first one's about 20 meters off the beach, you know, so you just swim around there. And, you know, the iron athletes are going to do the 5 laps continuously. But everyone else, we're just saying, just do a lap and come back in and then do another lap a bit later on and, you know, just get round. Doesn't matter, 2.4 miles, just get round, you know. So same with the cycles, same with the run, stroke walk. What we want to do is make September the 19th a seminal day for the Royal Marines charity. We want to raise a really significant sum to support the work the charity does, really.
And this is really important because fundraising for charities in COVID has been a bit of a nightmare, hasn't it?
Oh, it's been smashed, absolutely smashed. And, you know, I think we're all fighting battles. Everyone's fighting battles post-pandemic. You know, everyone's got their own little struggles and their own little odds and bobs. But I think one of the things organisations like the Royal Marines Charity do is they're a force multiplier, what we used to call a force multiplier in the services, as in you're getting real bang for your buck. So every penny you raise for them is kind of multiplied because it's going into really established projects, and, you know, it's going straight to the heart of a lot of the issues that affect our former service personnel and their dependents. And, you know, so it's really worth doing, and they need the help at the moment.
Yeah,
you know, they need that little bit of a leg up post-pandemic. So every swim stroke, every turn of the pedals, and every step that is taken on September the 19th is hugely significant for the charity. So yeah, that's the reason we're really excited about it and hoping we can raise, you know, a really, really good sum.
Sounds like a great idea. All I need to do is learn how to swim. No joke. So thank you very much for that, Monty. We've talked about an awful lot there. If you could ping us across some links to any of these things that we've talked about,
problem.
the more the better. And we will include all of that in the description of the podcast and when we share this on social media. But once again, I'd just like to say thank you very much. It's been absolutely fascinating.
Lovely. Thanks very much, Steve. Thanks for having me on.
I know I say this quite often, Mike, but what another interesting chap he is.
Yeah, fascinating, actually. Actually, the biggest thing that I thought came out of that interview, Steve, was you revealing your age for all of your listeners. So everyone now knows that you had a hard paper round.
Well, you know, I know you've got a few years on me and you don't want to discuss your age.
In true. So I know many of our listeners will know of Monty Halls through his TV work, or maybe the Superhumans event he won a few years ago now. But I didn't realise just how much he had done, and what your interview has done has made me reach for a familiar video provision website that I can go and look at all his other stuff, because he's done a huge amount of stuff, and I bet it is all as good as the stuff that I've seen on TV.
Do you mean YouTube?
Yeah, I didn't know if I was allowed to say that or not, but anyway.
Other video platforms are available.
I know I do actually. I've not met him face to face, but I have met him online before this interview, as you probably know, and because we both belong to a network called Bootnecks into Business. And you'll know I'm not a bootneck, but I'm an honorary member, I think, of it. And I've also, set up a Twitter sort of direct messaging with him after some of his programs, because I think he's utterly brilliant in what he's done.
He is. He's very compelling, isn't he? And he's very enthusiastic about his subject, which is always good.
Not just enthusiastic, but authentic as well. I can see real authenticity in everything he does. What I didn't realise, though, is that our paths very, very nearly crossed. So, he told you he joined the Navy to start with, and then realised the error of his ways, and went to transfer to the Royal Marines after 1 year, when he realised that his dream of becoming a diver would take a lot longer than thought. And he talked about this chap at the Royal Naval College, Britannia Royal Naval College at Dartmouth, who was the PT and sports officer, which is a post occupied by a Royal Marine officer on the staff, putting him to one side and telling him this is the way to go. I didn't know until recently that he actually was a PT and SO at Dartmouth as well, and he joined very shortly after I left the staff at Dartmouth. I think we missed each other by a matter of 2 or 3 months down at Dartmouth. So we very nearly met in, I don't want to really say this, but 1995 or 96.
Oh, can we start calculating ages yet?
No, I don't want to put off your listeners just yet, to be honest. But yeah, so I mean, and interesting how he keeps referring back to those 8 years in the Corps, 88 to 96, and the relationships he made with what he calls his muccas, his mates, that have stood the test of time, and who he keeps on going back to for advice, support, to help them, everything. They are a foundation of relationships that sit under everything else he's done, other than his family.
Yes, I agree. And also that kind of highlights the need for that support because, like I said in the recording, an overnight success is about 10 years, apparently.
Yeah, we've said it twice now, so there you go. He uses the term bootnecks, which is the colloquial term for Royal Marines, but he uses it very fondly, and he talks about them, how eclectic they are in terms of the range of skills and backgrounds they come from. And I, as an ex-Royal Navy person, I would actually say that everybody holds the Royal Marines in the very highest regards. They are the elite of the elite, really, and not just in Britain's armed forces, but probably in the world.
Yeah, a reputation well deserved, I think.
Yeah, and you can see in everything that he talks about, it's what he learnt in the Corps. He talked about aim, focus, dogged resistance. That's certainly a real trait. Going to pass the commander course, you absolutely need those. But also ambition and self-belief, which, remember he talked about going into Diver magazine for the first time and saying, I wanted to go and visit the 10 best dives, and what I'm going to do for you is this, this, and this. And they were so impressed by them, they assumed he'd done it many times before, even though that was his first.
Yes, his phrase was cuffing it, I think. I think on Civvy Street, we just call it blagging. I think there's another phrase as well, but, that's not for a podcast.
Well, he actually used the term chutzpah. And funny enough, when I was making my notes, listening to I wrote down chutzpah before he said it. So it's chutzpah. But it's self-belief. It's and a really good call out to other members of the armed forces community. Don't underestimate what you can do, because I think we all do. I think we all leave and think, well, I was quite good at driving a submarine or yomping over hills with a backpack or, flying a fast jet. But what can I do in Civvy Street? But actually, don't underestimate your ability to run things, to deliver things, because it's amazing. I think that was one of the most important messages he put across, actually.
Yeah, I quite agree. Rejoining Civvy Street or back onto Civvy Street is often a real challenge for people. And it's easy for people to underestimate the skills they have in the military and how they may transfer onto Civvy Street. Yeah.
It was a Watson Hall interview, because he talked about those fallow years, those 6 to 8 years, where actually not much, he got his degree, but had to scrape a living. He joined the Royal Marine. Big shout out for the reserves. Joined the Royal Marine Reserves to get a trickle of funding to help things do, but also to apply a support network as well. But he talked about, actually, I love the dit he spoke about, going for a coffee with a friend, a mucca, both telling each other how well they were doing in life, and then realising that neither of them could pay for the coffee at the end of it. I thought that was really funny.
That was a good dit, indeed.
But since he then, so he had this 8-year fallow period, but it was all about working out, the plan, what he was going to do and things like that. And then he sort of, he said he realised the big moment was when through a friend's telephone call, he got selected for this Superhumans event, which he won. He said, and he realised that was his big moment, and that would lead to other things, and it did. And actually, I say the list of things that he's done since then has been hugely impressive. And I've watched some of them, but I'm now going to watch all the rest of them because I think, there's some really great stuff there. And I love his work on sustainability, as I know you do.
Yeah, I've watched the Galapagos programs and I thought they were fantastic. I have to say, his daughters stole the show, but I think he would probably recognise that. But yes, I must dig out and have a scout around on YouTube for those other programs for sure.
Yeah, interestingly, he did talk about how important his family was to him, and actually he was wondering whether he could do these, big periods of separation away from them, and then realised that actually he could take them with him. So the Galapagos was not just great in terms of lifting the lid of what was going on environmentally, and wasn't it shocking, but also the ability to stay, bring his family with him, get them involved in the project. So actually his daughters are growing up now with that knowledge, and one of them might be as successful a marine biologist as he's become.
Yeah, and a dancer, just like you.
Oh, I don't think anyone would describe me as a dancer. Just talk to my wife. She would absolutely deny it in every sense.
Well, now there's an idea. Should we get her on the podcast?
You can ask. Ask tonight if you want. I think I know what the answer will be, though.
Yes, so do I.
So a couple of points to finish up on. I mean, it was a very, very compelling, interesting, interview that sort of twisted and turned in several directions, and I thought there was a couple of that really, points to end on. Which one a bit was the sustainability of fish and the importance of buying local. I think he emphasised that about 3 or 4 times. Buy local, buy your fish local. Visit a fishmonger, not go to a supermarket. I just wish there were more fishmongers around, actually, because they have been driven out by supermarkets, and it would be great to see more fishmongers. We're lucky in Portsmouth, of course, because we've got the fish market, and you get fresh fish daily there. So it's lovely to go down there and get some fresh fish, but not everybody lives near a fishmonger, and it is difficult.
It is, especially with the challenges on the high street these days, but that again is another subject.
Yeah, indeed. And the last point was this iron challenge. So did I hear you say you were going to go for it? Just do one of the legs or something like that?
Absolutely. Well, be one leg, maybe. He was very, very encouraging, but I don't think it's for me.
No, I can't see me doing. I got exhausted just thinking about it, to be honest. But it's a triathlon done at Ironman distances, albeit with the ability to break it up a bit. But it's still an Ironman distances of a triathlon. So whichever way you look at it, it's a challenge.
I think we'd be happy to do a podcast about it at the very most.
Do you think we can get him back on board when he's run it, or perhaps one of the people that takes part in it? Whether successful or not, it doesn't matter. I think that would be quite an interesting subject for a podcast.
I think we should definitely ask. You can't do any harm.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to go away now, and I'm going to go and watch some more Monty Hall stuff. I think he was really, really interesting.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. And I'd just like to say thank you very much, and I'll see you at the barbecue tonight.
The coals are on.
Thanks for listening. The Royal Navy and Royal Marines charity exists to support sailors, Marines and their families for life. If you or someone you know could do with some support, give them a call on 023 93 87 1568 or drop them an email on support@rnrmc.org.uk. If you enjoyed this podcast and want to hear more, please subscribe.